G'day guys, Tim here from Beat the Reset. Welcome once again to a fabulous podcast. I'm here with my army generals. On one side, I've got the Samurai of Silver. How are you, Sammy?
Oh, fantastic as always, Timmy. What a time to be alive, some might say.
It is a great time to be alive, Sammy. The world's going to hell in a handbasket, but for some reason, it's a great time to be alive. And on this side, we've got the Baron of Bitcoin from Stormrake. How are you, dear sir?
Feeling electric. I woke up this morning. I realized I didn't have enough Bitcoin. I wasn't bullish enough, and Bitcoin's already back at 105.5.
Now, look at this fabulous backdrop. Some people are going to think that it's just a green screen. Is it a green screen, Sammy?
I'm neither going to confirm nor deny the rumors.
It's totally real. Like it's all real.
Yeah,
it's all.
it looks real. It feels real to us.
It's real to us.
Yeah.
So we are on the 29th floor of a building.
Of a Beat the Resetter's home.
This is where basically we live. This is it. This is our little corner of the world.
Yeah.
And here we are. You can see beautiful Melbourne in the background. Sunny. No, it's not. It's actually not sunny. I think they've been doing something with the clouds again. But it works, doesn't it? It works. So,
All right. We were kindly invited here by a beautiful Beat the Reset member.
We were.
She said, opened up her home to us, and this is where we are now.
Yep, it's absolutely. She was very gracious. So, and this is really what it's all about. So we thought instead of doing our normal brunetti, guys, we thought we'd come here to do our podcast today. Let's talk about some of the great things that are going on in the world. What are the big news stories of the day, guys?
So big news story of the day is that war is off. World War III is now off. It looks.
How long did it go for?
Oh well,
12 days.
You know, but it was a good 12 days. Though.
It's good.
I mean, it was pretty
well for gold, silver, platinum.
Oh bloody hell! It was.
They could have gone a bit longer though, because I mean,
I reckon
there's a few more bull markets there for us. But...
Yeah, and they could have put a bit more suspense in, a little bit more theatre. I mean, I didn't feel any fear at all, so I think that they could have dialed that up a bit.
They didn't go hard on the fear.
No, they didn't. They didn't. It wasn't like COVID level fear. It was more like.
It was more of a 2 weeks to flatten the war, you know.
Wasn't even 2 weeks, eh?
Yeah, they didn't flatten anything, didn't they? Do it over the phone?
Yeah.
Look,
it was all very gentlemanly, the whole engagement. So they started off by the Americans actually contacted the Iranians and went like, "Look, we're going to take out some of your underground nuclear facilities. Please make sure they're empty."
Yeah.
Then it got.
It was a friendly war.
It was a friendly war, so they got taken out, and then the Iranians, to save face, had to retaliate. So they called the Qatari base where the US base was in Qatar, and said, "Look, we're going to be striking back, but do you mind evacuating the area?" And so they sent in some, friendly missiles there to kind of just look like it's all show and theatre, and it looks like it's been concluded now.
And they were striking back. Are they an empire? Now, I was going to say, I think I know what happened, because the Americans, of course, they floated the battleships into the Persian Gulf. The Iranians shut off the Strait of Hormuz. Is that correct?
Hormuz.
Hormuz.
Because if you say it's Hamas, we're going to start taking it out.
You'll see a missile going come on.
Straight up hummus, like hummus and bread.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is they got this little gaggle of warships in the Persian Gulf. They shut off the Strait of Hormuz, and then the captain of one of the ships said, "Listen, we've run out of petrol. We need somewhere around here to fill up. Is there any oil places around there?"
No.
Anyway,
dry as a desert.
The dry as a desert, and so they needed to refill the battleships, and of course the strait was blocked. So they rang up the leader of Iran. Who's the leader of Iran these days? The Ayatollah.
Ayatollah Khomeini.
And they said, "Listen, could you just open up the strait so we can fill up the ships, so we can start bombing you again, because we've run out of." That's what happened.
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's how it all unfolded.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Look, I mean, the thankful thing that I have is, between you gentlemen, we're not operating from a position of fear. You dropped the facts a number of times yourself, Timmy. We were on a live stream on Sunday saying this is not a cause for concern. This is not a cause for panic. It's all theatre, and it's all been resolved itself a lot faster than I had actually anticipated.
Yep.
But now it's actually just back to business as usual. And, again, we don't operate through fear. We operate through logic and facts.
Let's talk about facts. Oil. What happened?
Oil. Well, it dropped $10 a barrel in 2 days. Huge, 15% drop. Again, this is off the back of a reduction in tensions in the Middle East. So people were saying, "Oh, well, they blocked the Strait of Hormuz, then oil's going to 120 a barrel." There was a lot of talk, very bullish oil, oil. And then war's off, ceasefire, oil, bang, just down like a stone. So gold's actually held up a lot better than oil. I mean, again, they're both essentially the same play here as the World War III play. So gold's held up a lot better than oil. Yeah, not to say that oil is counted out here. It's the most industrially useful commodity in the world. It's in everything, plastics, petrols, everything. But yeah, oil prices dropped like a stone over the last 2 days. Crazy moves in the markets, insane volatility.
Which is why we also on the live stream mentioned trading this thing is not actually recommended.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
the volatility is sky high, you're going to be trading on leverage, you
Yep.
can get wiped out. It's why we focus on wealth positions, gold, silver, Bitcoin. So yeah, it's great advice that you gave.
And something on that point, just quickly, is that on the live stream we were discussing on Sunday night that look, when the markets open up tomorrow, oil's going to open up. It's gonna gap open, which it did. It gapped up at the open. It was up, 3 or 4% for the day. Gapped up, and then this news developed, and then the oil price dropped like a stone. So you can't trade that. Even if you tried to get the trade on Sunday night, markets weren't open. By the time markets were open, the gap up had already occurred. And then from there, it was essentially down. So if you tried to hop in once the markets had opened and gapped up, you would have got wrecked.
Absolutely.
And that's why on the live on Sunday night, we said, look, guys, probably not worth trying to trade this. Just, keep buying your assets of choice and keep stacking. And this is exactly why.
100%. What happened to Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, shortly after we jumped off the live stream on Sunday night, I was continuing to monitor the Bitcoin market and crypto market prices. We actually dipped below 100K USD for the first time since April, I believe it was. And so, yeah, the market had a bit of fear in it. And I was seeing everybody piling in on Twitter. Even old Shifter jumped on and said, great to see Bitcoin below 100K. Who's going to be buying this dip is a fool or something along those lines. But look, really quite simply, I love what Bitcoin does, because when every time people count it out, it's done, it's finished, it's going to zero, right? The Bears had like probably a 30-minute victory lap whilst it sat under 100K for about an hour and a bit. And then it resuscitated itself on the news that this war was not going to be going ahead, which we all said was not going to be the case. And then it went back up to 105,000 USD, and it proceeded to liquidate about $500 million worth of short orders, which just makes me smile. Like, I love it when bears get liquidated, because you can't catch me bearish.
When you did that, the thumb thing popped up again. Remember, we tried to get this to happen the other day.
I don't know.
Oh, look, there it is.
There you go.
My goodness, Sam, it's right over you there. Oh, geez, you popped the bubble, Sammy. Gold and silver. So obviously, we were expecting oil to do this. It's now done this.
Yep.
Where is gold and silver in all this?
So gold essentially followed oil on the way up. On the morning, it moved up quite nicely for the day. It has come back a little bit. I mean, it's essentially around the same price that it closed out on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning our time. So a whole lot of nothing from gold and silver, really, essentially flat. Essentially the same from platinum too. There's been not a lot of movement this week in the precious metals markets, which is good. I mean, if we're seeing this huge uptick in risk sentiment, Bitcoin reclaiming that 100 grand up to 105.5. Seeing the metals hold up strongly in the face of risk on, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, if this whole Iran war, it goes essentially a nothing burger, then gold's going to drop, $500 an ounce with no fear in the market anymore. That hasn't happened. Gold's held up very well in the face of this risk on move, which is very promising for precious metals holders. It tells you that there's still more to go in this precious metals bull market. I see a lot of people now calling for $4,000 gold, not because of US, Iran, Israel stuff, but because of what the US is doing with its budget. This big, beautiful bill, guys. The Israel, Iran stuff has held the headlines for the last few weeks.
The timing was quite,
Yeah.
serendipitous, might I add.
You're suggesting there's some linkage between debt and war?
No,
God forbid.
War, war, distraction from domestic spending bills? No,
Not a chance.
Never. War used to drum up support for domestic spending bills with huge increases on military spending? No, never.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I thought the name Big Beautiful Bill could have been better, Big Beautiful Augustine person. That would have been, but he's not that big. He's only 5'3".
I'm gonna have to share the same sentiment with Sammy, though, to be honest with you, because the reason why gold, silver, and of course Bitcoin will also do well from this is they are on an absolute spending blitz. We showed this on the live on Sunday. $37 trillion in US national debt, ladies and gentlemen. It cannot be understated how impactful that is for the world economy.
When are they going to pay it off?
They can't. They're $2 trillion.
It keeps going up.
$2 trillion a year in deficit spending, and they're wanting to increase that to $4 trillion a year in deficit spending. They want to double the deficit.
Yeah.
Get this, whilst the interest expense on the debt is $1 trillion a year. It's one of their biggest line items right now. So they're borrowing. Get this, guys, focus with me. Don't worry about this war. War is a distraction. They're borrowing funds just to pay back the interest. It's why Donald Trump has been smashing Jerome Powell on social media, calling him lazy and stupid and all those other kind of silly terms that you wouldn't expect from a US sitting
It's
president.
irresponsible.
But what he's really trying to do is pressure the federal chair to lower interest rates. Right? When they lower the interest rates, it means that they can more aggressively spend and rack up a deficit whilst not having to incur such a heavy interest expense. What do you think, lads, will happen when that rate cut comes through?
Oh, well,
yes.
Inflation.
We're gonna get sent to.
Can I ask you guys a question? Because you raise a good point. Is there really, this is completely a left of field question about the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. Do you think there is a rivalry between them, or are they actually trying to achieve the same target? What do you think?
I think that there's a really unique relationship between banks and government that I'm glad you touched on, Timmy, where they're not the same people, but they're on the same team and their interests are aligned heavily. And what I mean by that is, so there's a few weird things. Like here in Australia, if you have a big bank loans for, say, a mortgage, that becomes tax deductible, the interest on it. Why would the government say, look, we love tax revenue, but if you've got a lot of debt, don't bother paying? What's that about? That tells you that there's a friendship between banks who make money from debt and government who is essentially tax deducting debt. Right? There's something there. Governments don't just say, oh, don't worry about your taxes if you're in a lot of debt, unless they've got a banker in their ear saying, hey, don't get people to pay their taxes if they're in a lot of debt. Right? There's a relationship there. That's one way the relationship works. The other way the relationship works as well, what's in it for government? Well, banks lend to governments. Governments run these huge deficits. Who finances the deficits? Banks. We look at the Federal Reserve buying all these treasuries. What is that? That is banks essentially funding government. So it's this symbiotic relationship where government gives tax deductions for loans and debt, and banks fund government. There's a relationship there that's very interesting and worth picking apart.
What also got buried in the war headlines recently was the SLR being removed to zero. So what the SLR is essentially is the leverage ratio that commercial banks need to have in place in order to buy back treasuries, right? Treasuries being government issued debt. So when they issue all of this debt, nobody's buying it. No one. China doesn't want to buy US debt. Japan doesn't want to buy US debt. You know, on the global scale, US debt is a garbage asset. Nobody wants to hold it because you can get sanctioned, you can get your assets seized. So there's no real global appetite for US debt. In fact, it even got downgraded from AAA to AA1 by Moody's, right? So what do? Well, they make US banks buy the treasuries themselves with, get this, zero collateral requirements. Zero collateral requirements, because before, if you wanted to buy US treasuries as a commercial bank, you needed to have a certain amount of cash on hand in order to finance, say, the remaining 90%. You know, similar to how in Australia you can buy, your home with 10%, 20% equity, and the rest of it as a debt facility. They're using debt to buy debt. It is the biggest Ponzi that I could ever describe.
Sounds like a scam.
It's a scam. It's an absolute scam. So what they do is the commercial banks, they've got an unlimited line of credit. They essentially require no money down to buy US treasuries. US treasuries is government issued debt. So they're using debt to buy debt. It's just
horrific.
It's a bubble of magnificent proportions. And the assets, they're going to take you home. every time is gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
So it's interesting when you look at the US debt clock. On the top left-hand corner is the US debt.
Mhm.
Does it ever go down?
No, absolutely not. And that is by design, Timmy. By design. We live in a world that is essentially run by banks.
So how, if they were serious, let's just say, would there be any assets out there that could turn that around and bring the debt the other way? Is there any assets that make that debt bubble accountable? Anything that's maybe decentralized, something maybe in the commodity space, maybe digital commodity space. Is there anything that could bring the debt backwards?
So there's this asset, right, that for 5,000 years has been the asset of counting when it comes to debt. So all debt bubbles eventually blow up. They revalue against a hard asset, one that can't be printed out of thin air, and that's generally gold.
Wow,
and
I never
silver.
saw that coming.
So that's historically been what it is.
That's like the type of asset that the central banks would trade as a tier one reserve between each other. You know, you spoke about when, you spoke about how these trades go on with the central banks.
Mhm.
They're not trading currencies.
No.
They're trading actual real assets.
Yeah, like in World War II, the Brits paid the Americans for all the weapons and stuff. They paid for them in gold, not, fiat British pounds or anything like that. So yeah, it's a bit of a funny one.
It's like they don't believe that their currencies have any value.
Well,
that's what it feels like to me.
I mean,
it's like shocking.
If you could print that stuff out of thin air, you probably wouldn't think it had much value either.
Yeah.
You're going, oh, you want 10 billion, 20 billion? I can print you up 50 if you want. Oh, you want 100? Okay, no worries, mate.
Yeah.
I can print that. That's not a problem. Why don't I give you something real? Oh, actually, I don't know the sound of that. Let's not do
The
that.
biggest play that I've noticed is that what the Americans are most likely going to do, and this is straight from the mouth of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he's come out and said that we can't cut our way through the budget deficit, which is $2 trillion. They've got a national debt, as we discussed, of 37 trillion. So what can they do? They've got gold certificates that are marked at what price?
Oh, $41 an ounce or something like that? Yeah.
$42.22.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
You
I don't know. Look, it's like tattooed in my brain.
So the idea is that they can revalue the gold certificates to be at the current market price of what, 3,500 at the moment?
Yep, and that would free up about 900 bill.
That would free up 900 bill. They formed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve earlier in the year, which is already made up of about 200,000 Bitcoin, which represents about close to $19 billion, right? And so if they were to send Bitcoin to $1 million, they were to revalue the gold certificates, gold was to run, they could, in essence, grow the asset side of their balance sheet faster than their debt that they're growing at quite a rapid rate as well. But then that would bring the debt to GDP ratio down because US infrastructure and US assets, or assets controlled by the US, have increased in value as well.
I agree with you there, Bish, and I think something to keep in mind as well with the whole gold thing is that, we talked about this generating 900 bill by just revaluing to current gold price. That's not enough, right? They're running a $2 trillion deficit. Like Bish said, they want to double that to 4. 900 bill sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but to them it's not, right? It's not even half of their annual deficit. So is revaluing gold to 3,500 going to be it? Is that where they finish revaluing it to? I say no. I say if they make 900 bill revaluing it to 3,500, then revaluing it to 7,000 US would make 1.8 trill. And revaluing it to double that would make 3.6 trill to 14,000 an ounce. So you see what I'm saying there, where that gold price, the higher they revalue it, they essentially make themselves money or currency out of thin air. So that's why I say that gold's not stopping at 3,500 an ounce with this revaluation. If they do that and they realize that they can just keep making themselves a trill at a time, they're just going to keep revaluing that gold price upwards and upwards and upwards.
And that's what's going to send it to the stars. I mean, I'm so bullish on these assets. Like I actually don't have enough.
Yep,
I am chronically short Bitcoin, gold, and silver, and I've been buying it for 10 years.
There is one other point though with the gold and why they may not. The last time that they revalued gold, they had gold. Did you hear what I just said?
Yes.
Maybe they haven't revalued gold because it hasn't been revalued since the August of 1973. Maybe they don't have any.
Well, let's
you can't revalue something you don't have because that goes against you.
Well, then let's play out the scenario where if they don't have it, right, that means that the US government is short gold. How do you cover that position?
US dollars.
Well,
You buy it.
let's just rewind 3 months, right? 3 months in the gold market, where 3 months ago, Trump and Elon, best buddies, were out there telling everybody how we're going to audit the Fed, how they're going to go into the Fort Knox vault.
Because they did that. They went in and
Do you guys remember they did that?
They did that. They went in.
It was so quick and easy,
And all the media were there.
the media was there.
Except
and-
that.
No, I must have not.
We missed that episode.
Yeah, and then do you remember as well how the US was importing like insane amounts of gold, and then the Bank of England was saying, "Oh, guys, we've got delivery delays because we can only fit so many trucks in the bays." Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
So yeah, to what you're saying there, Timmy, about them not really having the gold.
It's a shocking thing to say.
No, mate,
But the question,
Part of the strategic Bitcoin reserve as well was that they were going to run a current audit of all of their Bitcoin holdings. That audit hasn't come through as well.
oh,
they seem to. They,
what?
I put that in a.
Where did all the Bitcoin and gold go?
Well, I actually, and now this is serious. I put in a freedom of information request to have I wanted to see some of the gold audits that have been done recently at Fort Knox. Apparently, that service wasn't available at the moment. They said this service is currently unavailable. So I've got to wait a bit
okay.
before a service comes.
Maybe
back
just give them a ring up and chase that up and just see.
I was also going to put the Bitcoin one in there as well. So guys, just want to know Bitcoin and gold. These are your reserve assets.
Yeah.
They said, look, that desk is not manned at the moment.
No, man. Yeah, that sounds
good. So this comes as a great shock. Let's get some predictions here, Sammy. Okay, so we've done World War III. That's done.
That's done.
The wars are a bit quicker than they used to be. I mean, the First
Yeah.
World War was 4 years. The Second World War was 6 years. The War on Terror was 20 years, and now the War in Iran was 12 days. Which is the 12 days of Christmas.
That tells you they're getting more efficient at war,
Yeah.
Timmy.
They're more efficient at the
It's
printing
quicker.
of currency.
Yeah,
It's quicker.
I mean, let's step through the Iraq War for a second. From 2003 till about 2020, before they trotted out the COVID pandemic, that was the current hysteria. We went from war on terror to war on COVID. What had happened is they printed $8 trillion. $8 trillion in 20 years funding a foreign war.
Yeah.
Right? I cannot
Yes.
explain to you.
How much do they spend on COVID? Because I mean, we printed a few dollars during that.
They actually expanded the currency supply so aggressively that 3 out of every 4 US dollars was created in 2 years during the COVID period.
Well, surely though, the American taxpayer is glad that the US government spent $8 trillion in 20 years replacing the Taliban with the Taliban.
And did we win the war on terror? And did we win the war on COVID? I mean, did we won that?
Well, I mean, they've been running the war on drugs since the 80s, and that's been, going well. So, George Carlin said it best himself. He goes, whenever there's a war on something, just know that they are endorsing it.
What?
Yep.
Oh, come on.
Yes, no.
Haven't you seen CNN? They said that.
Sorry, boys. I'm just a cooker. I'm not a
What part are you?
Oh, geez, I tell you, you're not going to be able to come on these sessions, Vish. Drink bombs like that. All right, Sammy, what's going to happen? We've done the war in Iran. It's over.
Yep.
We won, or somebody won. We don't know who won.
Yeah.
Somebody. We're going to
The
go
money
play some.
one. Yeah.
The money printer won.
Yeah.
So it looks like Iran is going to get a Bank for International Settlement central bank now, which is awesome.
Yeah,
In exchange for something which we don't know what deal was done.
No.
So the Ayatollah's still going.
They're still
He's still there. And anything else good come of it?
I mean,
Probably the longest silence we've ever had.
I had to be very measured in my response.
I know where you were going. There's a certain group of people in a certain country which we can't mention that probably benefited. So we won't say who that is because we'll get skewered.
Yeah.
But Sammy, what's going to happen to gold and silver?
So look, gold, it's essentially going to trade flat for a little while, is my 2 cents. It will keep going. The bull market will resume. But what we're going to see in the meantime is silver play that big catch-up move. So get your silver, get it while it's cheap. $40 US an ounce, it's coming. We're not far off, only $4 USD an ounce from where we are now. That's about 10%, give or take. So yep, silver's going to keep going. Platinum as well. Platinum may have a small pullback here, may not. I wouldn't wait for it. If I was looking to get in, I would just buy, and if it pulls back, buy again.
Yes.
Because this is a long-term breakout of the 15-year downtrend, guys. You may be thinking to yourself, platinum's up 40% for the year, Sam. I've missed the boat. Absolutely not. It's still the same price it's been for the last 5 years. So get your silver, get your platinum, both of which are super cheap compared to gold, both of which will massively outperform gold during the rest of this precious metals bull market. So yeah, 40 USD on ounce on silver within the next month or two. Platinum's going to outperform silver for this year at least. So yeah, make sure you focus on silver and platinum.
Done. Fantastic. Bish. Bitcoin.
All right. Look, for me, it's quite simple. Focus on BTC. That's where the value is. However, I am wanting to say that it is worthwhile in this current environment to be a little bit more bullish and a bit more risk on. So I'd be looking at, if you've got some exposure to altcoins already that you're in, like Sonic or Solana or Sui, you might want to dollar cost average them down. If you haven't entered into the altcoin markets, now would be a good time to explore it, because what you need to do well with altcoins is you need the right risk environment. And that's why for the last few months, it hasn't been the right environment for them, why they've struggled to outperform Bitcoin and why they've really gotten smashed. So whilst I would always advocate to add to your Bitcoin position, because there's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin, now's a good time to be taking a small bite out of the risk apple. If you've got altcoin exposure, dollar cost average them down, make sure that you've got your better entries, because like Sonic, for example, traded down to as low as 25 cents, right? We've been talking about this since it was 50 cents. So it's dropped quite a considerable portion since we've started talking about it. But that comes with the territory when we're discussing risk assets. For me, now's a great time to re-enter. Dollar cost average your existing holdings. Don't add into any new coins. And if you're only Bitcoin only, which is fantastic, maybe now's a good time to be adding in things like XRP, XLM, Solana, Sonic, but in small doses.
Fantastic, gentlemen. Great session. Here we are again at number something or other street in the city.
We'll be discreet.
We'll be discreet. We're in the middle of it, but this is a real backdrop. I just want to mention that. Did you guys feel the building move with that wind blowing? It's sort of, you can feel it swaying around. Maybe it's just me. Look, I did have a couple of drinks. Yeah. I was going to say. All right, that's it for me. Of course, Guy in the Hat and the Baron of Bitcoin. Your catchphrase is...
You're not bullish enough.
Which you are not. And of course, the Samurai Silver from Liberty Bullion, your catchphrase is...
What a time to be alive.
And of course, I am the Guy in the Hat. So let's do our little thing, guys. Research.
Bitcoin.
Bullion.
Make
good choices.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourselves. And as always,
make
good choices.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.